23 years of being called the disappointment. 23 years of watching my brother Quentin get everything while I got nothing. But as I sat in that Harvard auditorium, watching my father hand over our family's $75 million logistics empire to my golden boy brother, a stranger changed everything with 7 words. They don't know who your real father is. What I discovered in that folder didn't just change my life, it destroyed theirs. My name is Deacon Whitmore, or at least that's what I've been told my whole life. I'm 28 years old, and until 3 weeks ago I was the forgotten son of the Whitmore shipping dynasty. You know the type of family I'm talking about, the ones with portraits in museum wings, summer compounds that have been in the family for generations, and enough money to make problems disappear with a phone call. Except I was their only problem they couldn't solve. My mother, Vivian Whitmore, is 52 years old and has never met a mirror she didn't love or a compliment she didn't expect. She runs charity galas the way generals run military campaigns, with precision, ruthlessness, and zero tolerance for imperfection. She introduced me at social events as our other son Deacon, like I was an afterthought she had to acknowledge for tax purposes. Her diamonds cost more than most people's houses, but her heart was worth less than costume jewelry when it came to me. The man I called father for 23 years, Sterling Whitmore, built his shipping empire from his daddy's money and other people's sweat. 55 years old with silver hair that he swears turned that color from the stress of building his business, not from the stress of having me as a son, though he's made that joke enough times at dinner parties. He could tell you the hull number of every ship in his fleet, but he couldn't tell you what position I played on my high school baseball team. I was the starting pitcher, by the way. We went to state championships, not that he noticed. Then there's Quentin, my older brother by 2 years, 30 years old, Harvard MBA, and God's gift to the shipping industry if you believed our parents. Perfect Quentin with his perfect grades and his perfect internships and his perfect ability to make me invisible just by walking into a room. He didn't even have to try to be the favorite. He was born for it, groomed for it, celebrated for it. Every report card, every trophy, every acceptance letter was framed and displayed like religious artifacts in our Connecticut mansion. But here's the thing about being the forgotten son. You learn to watch. You learn to listen. You learn to see things that people think they're hiding. Like how Mother's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at Father. Like how Father's jaw clenched every time someone mentioned children resembling their parents. Like how Quentin's confidence was as fragile as spun glass, ready to shatter at the first real challenge. That graduation day at Harvard was supposed to be Quentin's coronation, the day he officially became heir to the throne of Whitmore Shipping International. The burgundy banners hung from every archway, the brass band played songs older than the buildings, and hundreds of America's finest families gathered to watch their children grab their golden tickets to the upper echelon of society. I drove myself there in my 2015 Ford F-150, the one with the dented bumper and the radio that only picked up AM stations. I parked it between a Lamborghini and a Bentley, both of which probably belonged to kids younger than me. My suit was off the rack from Macy's, the same one I wore to every family function where my presence was required but not wanted. Navy blue, nothing special, just like me according to everyone who mattered. The usher looked at my invitation twice, like he couldn't believe a Whitmore would arrive alone and underdressed. He led me to my seat in the back row, so far from the stage I could barely make out the podium. My parents sat in the front row, of course, in seats reserved for families who donated buildings, not just tuition checks. Mother wore a St. John suit that cost more than I made in 6 months at the warehouse. Father's cufflinks caught the light like tiny stars, each one worth a car payment. I should have left right then. I should have recognized this for what it was. Not just a graduation, but a public execution of any hope I had left of mattering to my family. But I stayed. I stayed because somewhere deep in my chest, buried under years of disappointment, was a stupid, stubborn spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd remember I existed. That spark was about to become a wildfire, and the woman walking toward me through the crowd was carrying the match. Nadira Castellano moved through the assembly like she owned every molecule of air in the building. Elegant, purposeful, and holding a manila folder that would reveal 23 years of lies. But I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that I was Deacon Whitmore, the useless son, sitting in the back row of my brother's Triumph, about to discover that everything I thought I knew about myself was a carefully constructed lie. And the truth was worth more than every penny of the Whitmore fortune. The ceremony was about to begin, the last ceremony where I'd ever be called a Whitmore. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see their faces when they realized what they'd thrown away. Growing up in the Whitmore family meant living in Quentin's shadow, except shadows are supposed to be dark and quiet, and Quentin's shadow was lit up like Times Square with constant celebration and praise. Our Connecticut estate sprawled across 40 acres of manicured perfection, with two distinct wings that might as well have been different universes. The east wing belonged to Quentin, a shrine to achievement with floor-to-ceiling displays of trophies, academic awards, and photographs of him shaking hands with senators, CEOs, and even a former president at some youth leadership summit. The West Wing was mine, decorated with participation ribbons and team photos where you had to squint to find me in the back row. "Quentin, show your Uncle Harrison your Harvard acceptance letter," Mother would say at every family gathering, her perfectly manicured fingers adjusting his collar like he was a prize show dog. Her diamond rings caught the light with every gesture, throwing tiny rainbows across the room that seemed to land everywhere except on me. Then she'd glance my way with that practiced smile that never quite reached her eyes. Deacon's still figuring things out. Some people just bloom later, don't they, dear? Uncle Harrison would nod politely, but I caught the pity in his eyes. The same look you'd give a three-legged dog that was trying its best to keep up with the pack. He'd pat my shoulder and slip me a $20 bill like I was 12 instead of 28, probably thinking he was being kind to the family failure. I worked at one of our family's shipping warehouses in Newark, and not in some executive training position either. I was a floor supervisor, which meant I loaded trucks, managed inventory, and dealt with union disputes over coffee breaks and overtime pay. Every morning, my alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., and I'd drive through the dark to get there before the first shift started at 6. My hands had calluses that makeup couldn't hide, and I knew every forklift operator, every dock worker, and every truck driver by their first name. "Why do you insist on embarrassing us?" Father said one evening at dinner, examining my hands like they were covered in something contagious. He'd noticed the grease under my fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could remove. "Your brother's about to graduate from Harvard Business School, and you're content being a common laborer? Someone needs to know how the actual business runs," I replied, cutting into my steak with more force than necessary. "Those trucks don't load themselves, and those workers don't manage themselves either." Quentin laughed, that easy, confident laugh of someone who'd never had to prove their worth. He adjusted his Rolex, the one Father gave him for getting into Harvard, making sure the gold caught the candlelight. "That's what we hire people for, little brother. Leaders don't need to get their hands dirty. They need vision, strategy, the ability to see the big picture." "Hard to see the big picture when you've never looked at the small details," I shot back. Mother's fork clinked against her plate, the sound sharp as a judge's gavel. "Deacon, please, let's not ruin dinner with your warehouse wisdom. Quentin's professor says he has the best strategic mind in his class." Of course he did. Quentin's professors had been saying he was the best since pre-kindergarten, when he finger-painted a blob that Mother swore looked like a Monet. Meanwhile, I could rebuild a diesel engine blindfolded. But that wasn't the kind of talent that got framed and hung in the family gallery. The graduation invitation arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by courier like it was a court summons.